Yo, what is up guys? It is Bumfris, back with episode 97 of our Reddit series. This one's going to be a little bit more entitled parents, and I know you're going to love this one. We are super close to episode 100, and I'm pretty open to suggestions as to what to do for that episode, so make sure to leave some in the comments below, and I'll read as many as I can. Once you've done that, leave a like on the video, then sit back, relax, and get annoyed at some entitled parents. So, this is quite a short story, but to sum it up, I go to my uncle's Taekwondo dojo and have been going there for about a year now. And new kids come and go every now and then, and all these kids are usually younger than me. Right now I'm 16, and the oldest one that has come into the dojo was 12 or 13. Now cue entitled mum and her two hellspawn kids. They joined, and they've already given off that crappy, I'm going to do what I want and be annoying attitude, and when confronted about it, they just shrugged my uncle off, who was the Taekwondo teacher. Now, all of this was about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and the two hellspawn kids, the oldest one was 14 and his youngest brother was 5, were getting cockier and cockier by the days, and at one point tried to fight the other kids to show off their new Taekwondo moves. One day we were getting taught how to spar properly and some techniques, and I usually spar with my uncle, but since this kid was about my size and looked like my equal match, my uncle decided to match him against me. Not a problem, right? Nope. This kid was aggressive as hell and couldn't even throw a proper Taekwondo kick, and he was trying to punch me and kick my legs, which is not allowed in the dojo since it's mostly kids. After 1 or 2 minutes of him throwing horrible kicks and punches, he then decides to just use maximum power and kick me in the chest. This was also not recommended since we were only practicing and he misses. My uncle sees this and tells the kid off for doing so, and the kid just brushes him off, and we continue fighting only for this hellspawn to throw another kick as hard as he can and keep doing so. I tell my uncle about this, to which he just tells me to try and defend his attacks and wait until we finish so that my uncle can talk to him and get him to stop. He throws another powerful kick, to which I use both my forearms to block, and this kid hits his ankle on my forearms and ends up messing himself up pretty bad. We call an ambulance since this kid is screaming and rolling on the floor, all while not responding to anything we ask him, so the ambulance arrives, and as soon as the paramedic asks him what happened, he magically stops, gets up and answers to pretend like nothing happened, and calmly tells the paramedic that this kid kicked me as hard as he can in my ankle after we got into an argument. My uncle was livid, and he proceeds to call the kid's mother and tells her to pick him up. The entitled mum takes 20 minutes to arrive and acts annoyed the second she walks in, and she demands to know who hurt her kid. My uncle responds and tells her that he is not hurt and repeatedly ignored important instructions about sparring, and as soon as this is brought up, she blows up and threatens my uncle and says how she's gonna sue my uncle and shut this place down, and storms off with her two hellspawns. My uncle sent her a message and told her to never think about coming back, to which she hasn't come back yet after 2 or 3 weeks. So I wanted to start today's episode off with what at least I consider to be a slightly minor version of an entitled parent in comparison to a lot of the stories that we read, because let me tell you one thing, the next few stories you're going to hear are going to be some of the worst stories that we've ever read. But hey, I do have to say one thing, at least this entitled parent ticked the box of my favorite entitled parent trait, and that is threatening to sue somebody for absolutely no reason. If things don't go your way, threaten to sue, and that's how you get on in life. It's really the only way. So this happened a couple of years ago, but it still just hurts. My dad and I have never really seen eye to eye. He grew up with no sisters and an awful mother figure, and none of his friends have daughters, only sons. I don't blame him for struggling to raise a girl when he had absolutely no reference point, but he didn't need to show blatant favoritism towards my brother. I've always been the black sheep a little. My parents and younger brother have always been this nice little trio. My brother is a mummy's boy, but dad dotes on him regardless. He's 4 years younger than me. I'm 18 and he's 14. I've struggled to find a place in the family. Even my standing as which sibling I am isn't certain, because my dad accidentally impregnated a girl at 19, had my half brother, and I was born 14 years later. My older brother was enough in my life that I don't feel like the oldest child, but not enough to feel like the middle. I'm just dad's retrial at parenting, and my brother is the beneficiary of all his practice. Now, aside from that little rant, the actual story. My brother and I are very musical. I play a multitude of instruments, and he just plays saxophone. He's good though. He always has been. He suffered from classic young sibling syndrome. We were in a much better financial position when I began playing clarinet, that I got a really good beginner/intermediate model that I still play to this day. When he started, about 4 years later, things had gotten tight. So he had to rent his from the local concert band, and it wasn't great. Originally it was fine because my parents didn't want to invest in something that he might not commit to, but he did, and he loved it. At this point I was 15, and I'd been working for 2 years at a local sports club, earning less than minimum wage because I was underage. working my butt off and saving a pretty hefty percentage of my income. My father, who felt responsible for my job since he knew the owner but I'd actually gotten the job myself, decided that he was entitled to my savings, which was about $500 at the time. His exact words were, "We could use your savings to buy your brother a better saxophone." And God, it crushed me. First of all, you cannot get a better sax than the one he has for only $500. And secondly, what kind of father asks one child to give up practically 2 years of work for another? It made me feel like he had more pride or hope for his son that his daughter's savings should contribute towards it. Even though at the time, I was saving for a student level clarinet and he knew that. He never offered to pay the money back or anything, and thankfully, after I asked mum what she thought of it and she lost her mind, it was never brought up again. Though, he has asked for my savings since then and I've said no. I cannot wait to move out next year. I have half a year of high school left, and then next year I'm moving 8 hours away to university, so that's where my savings are going. Unfortunately, I can't move out just now. Also, to explain the minimum wage situation, in New Zealand, minimum wage is $17.70, and it tends to go up every year. However, you don't have to pay minimum wage to employees under the age of 16. You can just pay them whatever you want. I started on $10 an hour at the age of 13, and nearly a year into the job, I went up to $14.25 as that was the current minimum wage. And that's where my wage stayed until I turned 16, even when the minimum wage rose. You know, I did warn you that it was going to get a lot worse than that first story. I guess this person is just lucky enough that they had one kind of sane parent, I suppose, but the other one, being obviously the dad, just seems like a real nutcase. I mean, who knows? He could be a decent guy, but from the sounds of it in this story, he's definitely entitled number one, but number two, he doesn't sound like a great father to his daughter. I mean, I suppose some people are just brought up like this in terms of the way the dad was potentially brought up, but you would think 18 years down the track, you would probably have learnt to, be a better father to your daughter and not have that bias as a parent. All I can say is, let's hope it doesn't get worse in this story, but I guess you just have to watch to find out. I'm writing this now out on bail, and the situation makes me furious. Heads up, I'm on mobile, it's long, I'm angry, and this story does not have a happy ending. I was picking my little brother up from his school last week, and I was running a bit late. I'm 23, and my brother is 9, still in primary school. After school, there is a group of kids that walk down a hill together with a teacher because the school is up a big hill that is shared with an aged care facility, so the traffic gets backed up down the hill. I usually park at a church near the base to go and meet my brother. I arrived about 10 minutes later than I normally do, and I was rushing because I didn't want my brother to freak out being all on his own. As I'm speed walking to where I meet him, I noticed that most of the kids have been picked up already and that there were only a few left, but there are plenty of people around, being right next to a Coles car park. That's where I see the entitled dad yelling at my little brother. I don't even know what it was about, I just heard yelling and got angry. We're not talking about a stern talking to or a raised voice, he was full on yelling at a 9-year-old boy. I get to them just in time, and my brother turns to run to me. The entitled dad grabs his arm, yelling, "Don't you run off when I'm talking to you," and spanks him. This mother effer spanked my little brother. All of this in front of his own son, who was friends with my brother. At this point, I see red. I'm not a big guy by all means, I'm 180 centimeters and 88 kilos, but I've played hockey for 13 years and can throw a hit when needed. I immediately sprint at this guy and shoulder front him as hard as I effing can, and we both go tumbling onto the garden bed next to him. I hear a loud crunch, and the guy starts rolling around in pain, yelling profanities at me. We had landed on a brick retaining wall and had broken his wrist, probably because I fell on top of him. At this point, I realized that I'm effed. There are witnesses everywhere, and sure enough, about 5 minutes later, the police rock up. We both get questioned, and an ambulance is called to see his arm. I don't know what happened to him after he left in an ambulance, but I was asked before I was arrested and charged with battery whether I wanted to press charges for him striking my brother. Of course I said yes, but it was an uncomfortable few days for me in remand at the courts waiting for my bail hearing. I spent the whole time angry and festering about what had happened. Right now, I'm still angry. I'm sorry this didn't have a happy ending or much to do with the entitled dad, but I needed to vent. Maybe I'm the arsehole here, but no one touches my siblings, especially not an entitled piece of crap who thinks that they're responsible for disciplining my brother. Just a quick update, the guy only spanked my brother once and let him go to keep yelling. I don't think he was going to continue hitting my brother. The witnesses spoke to police, but I was already in cuffs at that point. The unfortunate manner of the legal system here is that you can't use force on anyone unless defending yourself. My lawyer is good. I know him from my time at law school, and he explained to me that I should have waited for police, but there was nothing I could have done to that man, as it doesn't work like that. Also, Australia doesn't have security cameras at school like the US, however, this happened in front of a church, on a big patch of grass, opposite a car park, so there's definitely not any cameras. It might be kinda unlike me, but I don't really have a lot to say about this one. I mean, this entitled dad thought that it was his place to be disciplining somebody else's kid, and quite frankly, I think that kinda defines entitlement. I don't know, some of these parents are just something else, and I don't know what makes you think it's okay to hit anyone, let alone somebody else's kid, but I mean, each to their own. I'm sure the justice system will, hopefully show this person justice. Just off the back of that one, like I said, this one could potentially be quite upsetting. It does involve a child who is in a car accident and doesn't make it, so if that's something that's going to upset you, just skip ahead a few minutes just to make sure. I'll put a timestamp in the description. Anyway, last chance to skip through because we're getting into the story. About 15 years ago, my mum was working the night shift in an emergency room when they got a call by an incoming ambulance to be prepared for incoming car crash victims, including an unresponsive toddler. What had happened was a pregnant mother with a 5-year-old in the back was driving drunk the wrong way down the highway and hit a minivan head on. The minivan had a mother and her 18-month baby in the back seat. And to simplify the injuries, the minivan driver had a collapsed lung, concussion and neck injuries, the baby was unresponsive and it was extremely serious, the 5-year-old had bruising from the seatbelt and whiplash, and the drunk lady somehow only dislocated her shoulder and some bruising. When the victims arrive, the baby is the first to be worked on. The baby isn't breathing on its own, so the entire staff minus 2 are working on them. One doctor checks on the 5-year-old who, for the most part, is okay, and one nurse works on the minivan driver who is in bad shape but stable. One nurse quickly checks on the drunk lady, but determines that she's okay and goes to help with the baby. This is where she goes from just being crappy to being pure evil. The drunk lady apparently starts yelling at the doctors and nurses that she's in pain and needs to be seen now and she wants pain medication. One of the doctors tell her that she's fine and that they need to focus on the baby who is near death. The woman doesn't care and wants her pain meds. She can't have any anyway because she's drunk. But over the next 20 or 25 minutes, my mum and the doctors desperately try to save the baby while the lady, who is handcuffed to a stretcher in the hallway because all the other rooms are full and she's currently under arrest, is screaming at them the entire time that she wants to be seen and wants drugs. "You all don't have to work on them. Someone come and help me," she said. Unfortunately, the baby did not make it. This was very hard for the staff to accept, and my mum, along with one of the other nurses, started crying. It's at this moment that the lady screams something to the effect of, "Okay, the baby's gone now, can someone come and help me now?" Now, my mum is a very professional person that treats her patients with respect even when they don't deserve it. But in this case, she just loses it. She runs up to the lady, who is still handcuffed to her stretcher because she's under arrest for DUI, and grabs her by the hair. She drags the woman by her hair, still attached to the stretcher, into the baby's room and makes her look at the baby that she'd killed. The lady tries to look away, but my mum starts screaming at her, "Look what you did. That's why we weren't helping you. We were saving the baby. Look at them." At this point, the security and police removed my mum from the room to calm her down. She's sent home and immediately suspended from her job. They seriously considered firing her, but all the doctors in the hospital stood up for her, so she was just suspended for 2 weeks without pay and had to take some sensitivity classes instead. The lady that caused the accident ended up being an illegal immigrant and spent 5 years in prison before being deported. I wish I could end this story on a happy note, but nothing about this story is happy. Ending this story with the image of this lady being dragged by her hair through an emergency room with a dislocated arm is the best that I can do. I just wish that this story wasn't real. I know that it probably is real, but I get super invested in these stories, and this one just really, really hurts. I know this is digressing a little bit, but where I'm from, the amount of accidents that have led to deaths in the last 6 months is up nearly 70% from this time last year. I just can't imagine what it would be like for those people's families, and imagine this mother, she was there with her daughter when it happened. It would just be the worst feeling in the world. I honestly cannot imagine. All I can really say is, it's probably not going to make much of a difference, but to any person that listens to a story like this and does take some positivity away from it, it really is that just be safe on the roads. Regardless of who you are, I'm sure a story like this really does pain you, so if you can take anything away from it, it's just be safe so stories like this happen less and less. Alright everyone, that is that for today's episode of Entitled Parents. I just want to start off by saying thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm just going to take a second to plug a couple of my social medias, including our Discord server. I do have a Twitter and an Instagram if you want to follow me on both of those. They are both at Bumfris, and feel free to send me a message and I'll do my best to respond. I also just want to take a second to say thank you so much for all the love lately. All of the comments, the likes, the subscribers, just the fact that you guys tune in and watch my videos every day, it really does make my day. Every single one of you is the backbone of this channel, and I really cannot express how much I appreciate that. Without you guys, this channel would be nothing, and I love making these videos for you guys, and I love the fact that you enjoy them. So on that note, I will wrap things up for today's episode of Entitled Parents. I just want to take a second again to say thank you so much for watching. I hope you're all having a fantastic day, and I'll see you all in the next episode of Entitled Parents. Bye.